Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm talking to you today from it's May 21st, 2021. So this makes it a 555 day. So May, 2 plus 3 equals 5. 2 plus 2 plus 1 equals 5. Okay, so it's a day of change, a day of transformation. And essentially what that usually means, and again, just to go backwards a little bit, I'm here to talk to you about Vedic astrology or astrology in general. And I have about 30 years experience in astrology. I've been the president of the Council of Vedic Astrology. I'm also a priest of the Temple of Kriya Yoga, Swami of the Temple of Kriya Yoga. And I do palmistry, cards, a variety of other things. Also a Reiki master. And I do readings here in New Bedford. You can call me at 508-525-0001. I'm also a teacher. I also am doing a workshop in September at the Vidya Curriculum, and am doing a new project with a friend and fellow astrologer, Lolita Donatella-Rebeck, who's a really talented individual, and I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to work with her. So that's going to start tonight around 7 o'clock. We're gonna record that, and hopefully the stars will be with us, and it'll be well received. The also we're working on a book, working on several additional projects. I teach at Kepler College, which is a college devoted to astrology, and I also teach at the American College of Vedic Astrology. So I'm kind of a busy guy in addition to doing other jobs as well. But enough about me, and so certainly I'm an impressive fellow, but you're not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about astrology, how it affects you and the world. So let's do it. So basically, we have I'm putting up a now chart and making it for New Bedford, and this is how I normally start the charts. I've been looking at in a little bit more detail at divisional charts as well lately. I've been doing divisional charts since the 1990s. My readings used to last 3 hours because I used to go over every single divisional chart for people. But that started to get a little bit unwieldy, and people would be a little bit how you say, overwhelmed by it, and I'd be exhausted. So it was good for neither of us. But let's look at the chart right now. We have this is a Leo rising as I'm talking to you right now. The sun is in the 10th house along with Venus, Mercury, and Rahu. Now that has caused, let me see if I'm sharing. I don't think I'm sharing the chart. Let me fix that. Yeah, it would help if I shared the chart with you, wouldn't it? Professionalism. Oh boy. All right. So we have the Lord of the third house, and the 10th house in the 10th house. So that's what's called a Malavya yoga. So it's a great personality yoga for the planet Venus. We also have Sun in the 10th house. It's the Lord of the first house. So this should bring me some fame or recognition, but that's not why I do this. And the Lord of the 11th and 2nd house are in the 10th house. So it should be somewhat good for financial gain, although you'll see Mercury up here is about ready to change signs. So there are only 30 degrees in the sign. Mercury's at 29 degrees, 2 minutes, and it's about to step over into Gemini, its own sign, which will make it the communications a little bit less prone to hijacking as they have been over the past few weeks, but it'll also allow people to lie more effectively. And I hate to use that particular term, but that's basically what it does. Mercury and Mars are not friends. It's a combination you'll see in a lot of lawyer and politician charts. It allows people to fabricate things pretty quickly and effectively. So basically, it is good for gains for Gemini rising, but it'll only last a couple of days, and then Mercury's going to go retrograde. And when that happens, we'll go back to the sort of like the panic mode in communications we've been in for the past month or so, past 2 months or so. And basically, because we have a lot of activity in the sign Taurus, which is connected, of all the signs, most connected with wealth, you'll see a lot of insecurity about the stock market, insecurity about financial future, insecurity about the deficit. That seems to be a big issue in the United States right now, and also around the world, because people have been trying to spend money to get the economies rolling and back into shape again. And I think one of the things you'll see over the next few months, because Saturn last night went retrograde, went backwards in the chart as we see it from the Earth, you'll start to see people getting to be nervous about spending, and that'll slow down recovery just a little bit for about a month and a half. But you'll also start to see, because of Jupiter's presence in Aquarius, you'll also start to see people start to heal more quickly. A lot of the bans on COVID are starting to be lifted, and you'll see those bans stay in effect probably until September. In September, between September and December, I think we're going to see a little scare and a little fallback to previous positions on COVID and restrictions, but it's not going to last very long. So it's between September and December, and then people will start to get a little bit more relaxed and a little more comfortable, and you'll see the restrictions lift again. So I hate to tell you this, but there's going to be another panic is too strong a word, another area of concern around COVID and whether or not the vaccines are working in the last, it'll probably start to pop up around September, October, November, and then dissipate a great deal at the end of the year. But pretty much we're out of the COVID woods. It's not like this is going to come back in a big way. The other thing you'll notice whenever you see a Sun Rahu conjunction is people will resort to either demagogues or to people who are trying to exert more governmental control. And with Rahu, since the United States in particular is in a Rahu major planetary period, that won't be too appealing to them. They'll start to rebel against that. And this is why you're seeing the country, I've said this many times before, this is one of the reasons why you're seeing the country so divided. It's mainly because we're in a Rahu Mahadasha, Saturn subperiod. And basically, whenever you have combinations like this, Rahu tends to bring out what I would call revolutionary impulses in people. So they're not going to take it anymore. They're not going to stand for it. They're going to look for something new. They're going to either want to reform the way you think, or the other side will want to reform the way they'll be panicking about losing freedoms. And I'm the kind of a person who sort of like looks for the middle ground, looks for change, but not to the extent that people feel like they're being forced into it. Sometimes people have to be forced to change, but that's done either legally or through, it's not being done through controlling speech, which is a Mercury Rahu conjunction. So I think you're going to see more effort because Mercury's going to go into Gemini. There'll be a little bit of a feeling of freedom, and then Mercury's going to go back into Rahu, and you'll see this effort again to control speech or to control or to manipulate media. And one of the reasons I focus so strongly on that is if you look at the U.S. chart, media manipulation is part of our DNA. It's really, so it's in the 8th house. It's out of sight because it's in the 8th house in the U.S. chart, but it really does exist. And I'm not saying this in a negative way in terms of either a fake news or anything like that. I'm saying basically that at various times in our history, the press has actually worked with the government to suppress news. And that's been done in the interest of national security or in the interest of nation building. So essentially, if somebody wants to get a point across, it isn't necessarily fake news. But the emphasis will be different than if it's something that they don't want to that they don't want to propagate. So, and this is not, again, like I said, I have to be careful about what I'm saying because I'm not accusing anybody of making news. That's really not what's done. What's done is there's selectivity in what's covered and there's selectivity in what's not covered. So, and like I said, this really isn't new. This really isn't something which has happened. But with the increasing competition and increasingly monopolistic control of media over the past few years has become more common. So I'm not. So this is not something where. So this is to explain what I view as being manipulated news, and it's done by both sides. I'm not saying that one side does it or another side does it. Both sides do it. Both sides of the political spectrum do it to their advantage. So right now there is a Mars Moon aspect in the chart, so people are a little bit aggressive. We did see recent war activity in Israel. One of the things that makes me optimistic is Jupiter is inside of Vishak Nakshatra, which can actually make it a little bit less aggressive. And I'm going to look at one other. A friend of mine pulled out a chart. It's called the Koda Chakra chart. And it was for Israel. Well, let me see if I can find it. Special charts. Okay, so the Koda Chakra is really what's called an Nakshatra driven chart. And if you look over here, so these are like forts. So essentially governments will do whatever they can to protect themselves now. They'll even misrepresent things and act as if it's in the public interest. And it may in fact be. See, because you see Jupiter, you see Rahu and Jupiter, so it's both negative and positive. On the outer limits, you see Venus and Mercury. So there's a strong interest in preserving the peace, but there's this warlike frame of Mars and Moon on the outer side. So what that means in plain English is, although the outer environment is being done to essentially almost every government around the world right now is acting intensely to protect itself. The people, the outer circle, the people are willing to fight to do that. Okay. But inside the foundation is really not honest. The foundation is really more directed. It's more manipulated. I'm not accusing any government of lying. That's really not the idea. But basically, you have, so essentially what I'm describing in the chart is something which is really not alien, because most governments, even if they deny it, act in their own interests. It's not really I don't think it's such a shocker for me to say that. And most governments act, especially if Jupiter's involved with Rahu, is to protect institutional interests. So in terms of, so the people are on the outside defending something on the inside, which is not really, or it's trying to help them. I won't say it's not intending to help them, but it's trying to help them, but it's really interested in protecting itself. And I think that's what you see almost in any situation. So let's go to the world map. But this cluster is very important. And we're going to go to the lunar eclipse, which is going to happen in about around May 26th. And I've spoken about this a lot over the past couple of weeks. But the good thing about this chart is we have Jupiter in the 7th house. Jupiter actually does protect people. We have Venus in the 10th house. Venus actually does protect people, but it's really not able to do its full job of dispensing justice. And Saturn does indicate there's some slowing down or some rethinking of direction. So you'll probably see some reactionary moves over the next few months in governments and people across the world. Now, let's go over here to this particular chart. Hold on a second. And I want to get this chart made it too big. Get this out of the way. My apologies. Then I want to get the eclipse chart up. And that eclipse. Where is my eclipse chart? Oh, I'm sorry, folks. There we go. Eclipse May 26th. Now, eclipses come in twos, but they're transformative events. They're not necessarily evil. A lot of people who do Vedic astrology say the best thing to do during eclipse is nothing at all. And it's basically because the sun and the moon are not auspiciously placed. So, and this eclipse is going to be kind of intense. It'll be in Scorpio. But before we go to the eclipse, I want to look at what's happening around the world and see astro mapping and see what's going on around the world right now. Okay, so if we move to this chart, we have a Mars and a moon line. So let's start from west to east. We have a Mars and a moon line affecting California and western United States, and a Mercury line affecting Alaska. So there can be some panic or some problems in Alaska, Mars line in Alaska, maybe some earthquakes in Alaska, maybe some earthquakes in Tierra del Fuego, maybe some violence in India. And this is, I think, connected with the pandemic. And Saturn is reaching up through, but a lot of police action looks like to me in India. And Saturn is going to China. So China is actually going to be suffering economically as well, at least in the middle part of the country. And so will Southeast Asia, large parts of Southeast Asia. But the eastern part of China will be doing pretty well. So will the Philippines and Japan and even Australia. So if we go over here, there's a Mars line running through Iceland, close to the Azores. And also there's a moon line running up through close to England, and a Saturn line running through Western England and into France. Eastern England and into France, and down through North Africa. So in plain English, that represents some trouble in England, maybe some potential for earthquakes or volcanoes in the Azores. Moon and Saturn, so there is talk of some emergency measures being done in England. I've heard that on the news. So that's the Saturn, that's the control of the people in England. And Jupiter is passing through Eastern Europe, which looks pretty good. It looks like they'll actually be in pretty good shape. And Turkey looks to be in pretty good shape. So Turkey they'll have to have the government intervene in Eastern Turkey, probably for vaccinations and probably for military conflict. But overall, Turkey actually looks pretty good for the time being. But the place that still looks bad to me are Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Central Russia. And we're going to see some changes in governments, maybe in Pakistan, or some upheavals, some rebellions, and also some extreme poverty in China. Saturn line runs close to Western South Africa. I didn't want to forget that. And there are a bunch of lines running through Colombia, Brazil, Peru, Argentina. Argentina, I know, has been having some trouble lately. So there's almost like a panic, almost like an attempt to seize control or proclaim martial law in Argentina. And Brazil is going to continue to have problems with communications and problems with panic and bad information coming out of it. The areas I'm a little bit worried about, and I forgot to mention the Eastern United States. Sun, the government's going to have a lot of disruption over the next few months with the Sun Rahu lines close together. And you'll also see Cuba and I can never remember the name of the island, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Espanol, I think it is. And they'll have some problems. There's some panic in Puerto Rico. I'm not sure what it is. There may be some panic connected with land or with property. And Venus is running through Guyana. That doesn't look so bad, but again, some problems with the government, some problems with scandal in the government, and the same is true over here. So there'll be governmental scandal in Washington, New York, and this general part of the map. That'll come really to the fore over the next few weeks. I can't tell from this chart whether or not it's on the Democratic side or on the Republican side. My instincts are telling me it's Republican, just because Sun is in Venus' sign, but just because of Saturn going retrograde, I wouldn't put it past both parties to have some kind of big scandals emerging. So keep your seatbelts tightened over the next month or so. You're going to see a lot of information come out of Washington, which is not really favorable to anybody. And I have read that a lot of Biden's initiatives are being blocked or being hamstrung. The one area I want to look at is Israel, which is really over here, sort of. And there's no line running through Israel. And I'm trying to see whether or not there's a... Yeah, the only line that's running through Israel is a sun line. The one to the left, I really can't see. This is really tough to draw. There's race. So that looks like a Venus or a Mercury line. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but I'm hoping the ceasefire holds. I'm thinking from this chart it will. But there'll be a potential for violence again within about 4 to 5 weeks at the outside, just because of Mars going into debilitation and people needing to prove themselves to each other. Let's go to the eclipse chart now for a few minutes. Layout examples for us. And this chart's just for today. I think what you need to do is look at this chart in conjunction with the eclipse chart in order to figure out how it's going to affect you personally. But let me go over here. And this is the eclipse chart. So the eclipse is occurring in Taurus and in Scorpio. So Rahu is allegedly exalted in Taurus. Ketu is allegedly exalted in Scorpio. The reason I say allegedly is because there's a lot of dispute about where these particular planets are actually exalted or debilitated, because they're not real physical bodies. They're essentially forms in the air that cause eclipses of the sun and the moon. So, and I want to look a little bit ahead at June 11th. I just want to look at the day. I'm not going to get a precise moment, but let me just look at. Let's just pull up June 11th. Excuse me, 11, 2000. So there's not as many of these as there have been in previous years. 2019 was just a bundle of eclipses, and they were involved with a lot of planets. That is usually not a good sign. It does give a chance for people to change and rebuild, but it's still not a good sign. So, all right, so that's May 26th and June 11th or thereabouts. Let's see what that looks like. So we're going to be flipping back and forth between these two charts for a few minutes. All right, so June 11th, the eclipse will probably occur a little bit earlier. Sun's in, let me just look up this quickly. All right, so I'm glad I took a few moments to check it. The eclipse is actually June 10th. It occurs at around 4:12 in the morning in New Bedford, and it does cover the band. I can show you the area it covers. Over here, so the eclipse shadow path usually is, cover like basically New England, Europe, and Northern Asia. So most of the landmass of the world, except for Africa, South America, and Australia, and East and India, Turkey, and Arabia, and southern China. So basically, it's more of a northern hemisphere eclipse than a southern hemisphere eclipse, and it looks like its most intense penetration will be in Canada and in eastern Russia, but it looks like it'll be pretty intense around New York, the New York belt, New England, down really into South Carolina. But definitely Washington, D.C. will be involved. If we look at Europe, most of Europe, except for southeastern Europe, like Bulgaria, will tend to be involved. Turkey won't be involved. Iran won't be involved. Syria will be partially involved. So a lot of it, and Israel will not be involved. So that's good. So let's see if we can go back to the screen where the charts are. All right. So this is the solar eclipse. Doesn't look to me as frightening as the lunar eclipse. And that's mainly because we don't have any planets. We don't have the moon in a debilitated sign, which is very important. But Mars is debilitated. It's the Lord of the seventh house in the eclipse, and that can make tempers flare. It can make people have something to prove to others. And it's the Lord of the moon sign, but the moon is weak anyway in an eclipse. So eclipses happen when the moon passes in front of the sun, right? So essentially, what that means is this first part of the eclipse will have a lot of disruption to financial security, a lot of disruption to a lot of panic connected with the government because of the Sun Rahu conjunction, and some panic connected with the government, with the general public. So there'll be a lot of pessimism. The other thing is Saturn's in the ninth house, so that means things will move slowly. Likewise, Jupiter's in the 10th, so that's actually reassuring. It's reassuring for health purposes in particular. And Mercury and Mars are in the second house, so this gives us potential for lying or for misrepresentation, as I told you before. If we go back to the eclipse point, if we go back to the second eclipse. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Rahu, Mercury, Sun, Moon, so potential for lying, but not as deliberate, or potential for misrepresentation and panic, but not as deliberate as during the lunar eclipse. And also Mars being Lord of the seventh house, relationships with neighbors will be strained. Saturn's aspect in the 10th house. So again, not a lot of progress made in the economy. You probably won't see that really until the end of the summer. I would say until around late July, early August. And also, at least from this chart, Jupiter aspecting Venus. So that's going to be good for romantic involvements and romantic relationships. But basically, whenever you have a chart like this, communications will be a little bit askew. So communications are going to be a little bit screwed up for the next 3 weeks. It is a good time to get. There's always a positive side to every bad planetary transit. People will be prone to be less aggressive with Mars and Cancer. People, although they'll be less confident, and people will be less prone to. They'll be more prone to panicking with Mercury retrograde, but it's a good time to pick up bargains. Okay, so that's the positive. Jupiter aspecting Venus will give a sense of relative well-being during this eclipse. So we'll have a period of about 2 weeks of what I would call panicking or bad news after bad news after bad news. And then after June 11th, it'll start to ease up quite a bit. I don't use Pluto. I'm aware that Pluto's in this sign. I don't use Uranus. I'm aware Uranus is in the sign. And one of the reasons I don't is because I have the lunar nodes. But if I include them, just look at them for a second. Let's see. All right, so, and I want to look at the map for the first eclipse, for the second eclipse. But basically, okay, they didn't take. Sorry about that, guys. Maybe putting too much information on the computer. Hitting my upper limits, or I may not hit the right button. So I'll fix it. Okay, so Uranus is in the 7th house. Pluto is in the 9th house, so that does indicate changes to government. The Saturn retrograde will do that as well. And there's our friend Neptune. Neptune is in the same sign with Jupiter, so Neptune is not doing much of anything right now. To be honest with you, it's in the latter stages of Aquarius, which tends to make me think a lot of the optimism about the age of Aquarius starting is a little bit unrealistic. But basically, this is not really a bad eclipse chart. There will be, again, some dissatisfaction when governments around the world. Governments will have problems staying in power or maintaining power, especially after scandals that will come out over the next couple of weeks. So let's look at which governments are in trouble. Courts. 1 second. So we can see the United States government at least is avoiding trouble with the May eclipse, but is still touching it a little bit. Brazil, the government is definitely in trouble. Mars is passing through West Africa. It's hitting a few countries, but so there may be some rebellions or some uprisings there. Saturn is heading through Belgium, England, Germany, and Jupiter is going through Western Turkey. So that actually means they'll have a lot of medical supplies sent down there. The governments which are most in trouble are Iran, Syria, and I would say Ukraine from this map. Venus and Mercury are passing through pretty much Western Russia, and Mars is passing through Southeast Asia, close to Cambodia, but not quite there, and close to Burma, and through China, especially Tibet. So this area right here is Tibet. So I think, and there's some governmental issues or some scandals in Australia and Papua New Guinea. So those are the spots in the world which are going to experience the most problems. In terms of earthquakes, maybe some off the coast of northwestern Canada, maybe some off, maybe Greenland, maybe Iceland again. We have some volcanoes in Iceland, and also kind of a dangerous time to be in Burma um, or China in terms of earthquakes or potential for earthquakes. Yeah, we're looking at, I should be looking at Rahu too, or violence. So Rahu lines some problems in Brazil. And let me get this out of the way. And not much else from what I can see. I'm optimistic. I'm guardedly optimistic that this line right here, moving close to Israel, won't reignite tensions. It's really tough to tell which line it is. This isn't marked very well. That's Jupiter. Ascendant Jupiter, Sun, Rahu. So this would be a Mars line. So there is the potential for some more fighting in Israel. I don't think it'll be very aggressive or very destabilizing. The other thing, so that's for May 26th. And let's look at June 11th. Yeah, I want to make sure that I give time for the horoscopes. One second. June 11th. Quickly. All right, got it. So, scandal moving away from the United States. Although there is a Mars line, so there'll be fighting breaking out in Florida, South Carolina, up through Ohio. So some possibility of riots. And Venus is running through the central part of the country, so some possibility of resolution of immigrant problems. And I don't like these three lines I see near California and Portland and Washington. So that indicates some instability in that part of the world. There's a Saturn line running through England. As I said, I think it's going to be oppressive in England and through France. And Rahu, Moon, Sun, Mercury, all passing Iran's going to be having some trouble. It looks fine for Turkey. Again, like I said, a lot of advances in medicine, especially in Eastern Europe. And if we go over to Australia, Australia's going to have some real difficulties over the next few months. Some fighting, I think, between China and one of its neighbors as well. Thankfully, India is left alone right now, just for the time being, and they'll start to show some improvement. If we go back to the natal map, the major thing I would encourage over the next few weeks, I would encourage Aries to focus on financial growth and not get frustrated about money. This pattern is going to continue for a while, but in terms of desire or manifesting desire for romance, This next month will be very good for it. Mars is in the third house, but Mars is in the fourth house. So there may even be arguments or some jealousy connected with romantic involvements. The other planets, K2's in the eighth house, so there'll be some difficulty in holding on to money. Saturn's in the ninth, and Jupiter's in the 10th, so career life should expand, but it'll be a lot of work. If we go to Taurus, Taurus has the most activity this month. So Rahu Moon conjunction, Moon is exalted in Taurus. So you'll start to see the sign get a little bit more concerned about their own personal welfare and their own personal desires. Venus is in the second house. This planet will focus a lot on beauty and luxury. Mars is in the third house. It'll have a lot of ambition, a lot of aggression, a lot of ability to fulfill its own desires. And the fourth house lord, the sun, is in the first house. So again, a lot of focus on homeland, a lot of focus on family matters. And relationship life, some unexpected relationship opportunities are present because of K2 in the seventh house. Saturn's in the eighth house, or Saturn's in the ninth house. Good for career luck. Jupiter's in the 10th house, again, good for career luck. So essentially, apart from relationship matters, this looks pretty good for Taurus. Gemini has Venus in the first house. They seem very attractive, very loving, very giving, although they will be a bit short-tempered. So they'll be kind of frustrated with waiting for the other person to make a move. They'll decide maybe to get more aggressive. The Lord of the fourth house is the sun, and is placed in the first house. So there'll be a lot of focus on home and family matters and settling disputes between family members and children. And the sixth house lord is Venus. It's in the second house, so good for money for this sign. The fifth house lord is in the first house, so it's good for money for this sign. Sixth house has K2 in it, so people have to be careful about infections or getting too close to other people or getting too angry. Saturn's in the eighth house. Again, this means some difficulty holding on to money. Jupiter's in the ninth, good career luck, and pretty much in the 12th house, a lot of expenses, mainly spent on publicity. For Cancer, Mars is in the first house, aspects the seventh house. This chart, this sign in Capricorn have been tough on relationship life for the past few months. Capricorn will be improving within a couple of months. Cancer, not so much so. But basically, this gives a lot of perfectionism in a relationship, a lot of arguments over the right way to do things or the wrong way to do things. Children will be problematic, although they'll be inspired. Some money coming in, though, from relationship partners, so that's good. And overall career life looks like it'll give some gains and some new friends and some new acquaintances. Leo has Mars in the 12th house, so that's not good. It gives problems with relationship life. Although Venus is in the 11th house, so people will gain more contacts with relationships. And they'll gain more money. K2's in the 4th house. Gives some detachment from home life. Saturn's in the 7th, so relationships will seem to be tedious or a lot of work. Jupiter's in the 8th, so again, some inheritances are possible for this sign. And Rahu, Mercury, Sun, and Moon are all in the 10th house, so this should be a very good month for you career-wise. A lot of your contacts will have to be made in second bouts and third bouts, but don't give up hope. For Virgo, Virgo has no planets in the 7th. It has Saturn in the 5th, so it'll seem like this sign's having some trouble making itself feel happy. Jupiter's in the 6th. It'll have some problems with the home. There'll need to be a lot of repairs in the home. And ninth house, Rahu, Moon, Sun, Mercury are all in the ninth house. So this should actually be good for financial growth, and financial luck and career life should actually be very sweet for this sign. But friendships will seem to be a little bit difficult or a little bit hard to sustain. For Libra, Libra will have some problems with relationship life because relationship partners will be jealous of the time the person's spending at work. Eighth house will give a lot of inheritances, although the sign will feel a little bit trapped. The Lord of the First is in the ninth, which is really good for luck. It's really phenomenally good for luck. So if these folks want to do something new or undertake some new project, it's an excellent time to do it. K2's in the second house. Speech is misunderstood or difficult to express. And Saturn's in the fourth house as Lord of the fifth, and Jupiter's in the fifth house as Lord of the third and the sixth. So basically, this means very high intelligence levels, educational opportunities for the sign. Scorpio, again, another difficult planetary placement. Scorpio's got 4 planets in the seventh house, almost never good for relationship life. And there'll be this sign will have to take on some additional work. Venus is in the eighth house, some potential for financial gains through relationship partners. Saturn's in the third, good for financial luck and determination. Jupiter's in the fourth, so this is good for financial growth and home security. And last but not least, that cluster of planets. I keep coming back to that cluster of planets. It's really going to be a difficult month for this sign up until around the 15th of June. So just hang in there. Capricorn is in, I'm sorry, Sagittarius has Saturn in the second house. So again, it's slow growth earnings. Jupiter's in the third house, so more optimism. Moon is in the sixth house, so be careful about health and diet. Venus is in the seventh house, so good opportunity for relationships to blossom. Mars is in the eighth house, although you have to make sure you're not taking advantage of in relationships. And K2's in the 12th, so very strong interest in spiritual life. For Capricorn, we still have what's called a Sasha Yoga. So this sign will have a lot of authority, but it'll have a lot of resistance from partners this month. So partners they'll be expecting perfection from people. It'll take a while to build that up. Jupiter's in the second house. I think that's a good omen for the sign. It will give a lot of financial growth and financial income. And last but not least, we have this cluster over here in the fifth house. And that'll be good for overall luck for the sign, good for past life credit. There's an exchange of lords between Venus and Mercury, so essentially it looks good for relationship life for this sign. But again, they will have enemies and people who oppose them, maybe even marriage partners who oppose them, and friends. And finally, K2 in the 10th, so not a lot of career recognition, but a lot of personal happiness. Finally, Pisces. This cluster planets in the third house makes the sign kind of fearless. Venus in this house makes the sign very, very optimistic, very, very happy. Mars in the fifth, some problems with children. K2 in the ninth, some difficulty communicating with bosses, and Saturn in the 11th, and Jupiter in the 12th. Good for financial gains, but slowly, Jupiter in the 12th. The person gets interested in spiritual life or giving to charities. So that's it for this month. I know I rambled on a little bit long about the eclipses, but they're important, and we need to check those out over the next few months. And I'll be providing more detail on how to analyze the eclipses. So that's it for me for this week. I think that's probably enough. You've heard my voice ramble on quite enough. And I want to wish you a pleasant week and the best of luck. And namaste. Thank you very much for watching. And please share with friends. We need to increase the subscriber base substantially. And I just want to get a lot of people watching this because we're going to be doing some exciting things on this in the future. It won't be just me, it'll be other people I'll be guesting on. So if you're interested, please give me some encouragement and please subscribe. Your recommendations are always welcome. I did take some recommendations from a person this week, a few weeks ago. I haven't implemented them yet, but I will. Okay, that's a promise. So God bless everyone. And take care of yourselves. Be careful. Have a nice day. Namaste. Again, contact me for readings, 508-525-0001. Thank you. I hope you like the new backdrop.